tight-woven silk of his undershirt, which in turn slid stickily against his skin. The fingers of his left hand cramped, where they pinched flesh together along the edges of the long, perfect slice stretching from his ear to his collarbone. The wound that had saved his life still oozed. As the sun lowered in the sky and the cold came on, blood froze against his knuckles. He stumbled between bodies still. The fingers of his right hand were cramped also, clutching a bow. One of the bow's laminated limbs was sword-notched to uselessness. The whole thing curled back on itself, its horsehair string cut. Temur used it as a walking stick, feeling it bend and spring under his weight with each step. He was beyond suffering shame for misusing a weapon. The old Khagan, the Khan of Khans, Temur's uncle Manke, son of the great Khagan Temusan, whose enemies called him terrible, was dead. This war was waged by Manke's would-be heirs, Kulan and Koribuka. Soon one of them would rise to take Manke Khagan's place, as Manke Khagan had at the death of his own father, or the Khaganate would fall. Temur, still stumbling through a battlefield sown heavy with dead mares and dead men, after half a day walking, didn't know if either his brother or his uncle had survived the day. Perhaps the Khaganate had fallen already. Walk. Keep walking. But it wasn't possible. His numb legs failed him. His knees buckled. He sagged to the ground as the sun sagged behind the horizon. The charnel field had to end somewhere, though with darkness falling, it seemed to stretch as vast as the steppe itself. Perhaps in the morning he would find the end of the dead. In the morning he would have the strength to keep walking. If he didn't die in the night. The smell of blood turned chill and thin in the cold. He hoped for a nearby corpse with unpillaged food and blankets and water, and perhaps a bow that would shoot. The sheer quantity of the dead was in his favor, for who could rob so many? These thoughts came to him hazily, disconnected, without desire. They were merely the instincts of survival. More than anything, he wanted to keep walking. In the morning, he promised himself, he would turn south. South lay the mountains. He had ridden that far every summer of his young life that hadn't been spent campaigning. The wars in the borderlands of his grandfather's empire had sometimes kept him from joining those driving the herds to his people's summer ranges, where wet, narrow valleys twisted among the stark gray slopes of the stele of the sky, where spring-shorn sheep grazed on rich pasturage across the green curves of foothills. But he'd done it often enough. He'd go south, away from the grasslands, perhaps even through the mountains called the Range of Ghosts, to the Celadon highway city of Keshkare, away from the dead. Keshkare had been a Rasan city before Temur's grandfather, Temusan, conquered it. Temur might find work there as a guard or mercenary. He might find sanctuary. He wasn't dead. He might not die. When his throat scabbed, he could capture some horses, some cattle, something to live on. There would be others alive, and they too would be walking south. Some of them might be Temur's kinsmen, but that couldn't be helped. He'd deal with that when it happened. If he could find horses, Temur could make the journey of 900 yard in 8 hands of days. On foot, he didn't care to think how long he might be walking. If Kulan was dead, if Koribuka couldn't consolidate his claim, the Khaganate was broken. And if he could, it held no refuge for Temur now. Karash, with its walled marketplaces, its caravanserais, its surrounding encampments of white houses, the round felt-walled dwellings Temur's people moved from camp to camp throughout the year.